This week, even since we spoke last week, more has come out about what happened in the shooting. And I think really what has happened is there have been a lot of people coming together and saying, we're not going to let this lie. We're not just going to hear about we should change things. We want change. What do you think about that? And what are the changes that you could see really happening on the federal level in Congress or even at the state level?
Well, look, I think the biggest change is going to take place at the state level. And you're also going to see some change at the national level. But you know, security for schools is really a district-driven issue. You know, we had discussed last week about dropping the bill, Stop Violence in Schools Act of 2018, which would focus on hardening the target of the schools, teaching individuals what are the warning signs to look for in these individuals who later become mass killers, and then also setting up an anonymous tip line for folks to be able to call in and report those signs that they see, and that's all important. But it always comes down to this, Kent. Security is always a layered process. So,
what do you mean by that? It's a layered process.
Well, what I mean by that is it starts at the sale of a gun with making sure that we have an effective background check system in place, and there's certainly some tweaks that we can talk about there. Then it is hardening the target at the school.
Part of your bill, part of the legislation
you're proposing. Part of the legislation in H.R. 4909. Having folks as good sentinels themselves out there looking for these signs and then reporting them, and then police responding, which obviously there's some issues dealing with the FBI, and quite frankly, I question some of Broward SO's response, and DCF and others who had dealt with this individual, Nicholas Cruz, before.
Because there had been multiple complaints on it.
Yeah. And so there were plenty of opportunities for the state and local to get involved in that individual's life. But then finally, you get to the actual security of the individuals inside that school. And if you have a determined mass murderer who is armed with a firearm, he's going to get into that school somehow, whether he waits for someone to open a door and slips in or however he might get in, he's going to get in. The only way you're going to stop a bad guy with a gun in this situation, after all these other things that you've done, he's still going to get through, and then you have to have folks on the ground with guns to stop him. Yeah. Now,
do you mean school police officers or trained security, or what about this notion that we're hearing even from the White House this week about maybe some teachers
what that's all about,
to have
Kent?
weapons?
All of that talk is about how much do we want to pay. If you want to do it the best way, put police officers in there. They're trained, they're active shooter trained. They have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to do the best job for you in that situation. The problem is law enforcement officers are very expensive. If you're going to put 2 officers in every school in the county, I don't know, how many we have, 108, something like that, I think, or more. It's going to be a lot of officers. There's a lot of expense there. So the question becomes, how much do we want to spend to make sure that this does not happen again? Then you hear people say, well, you know, let's not do police. Let's do school resource officers who actually work for the school board, and they may not be as well trained as the police, but they carry guns and they're qualified and all that. And then they say, well, that's too expensive too. You know, really, if we just put guns in the hands of a few teachers that could be trained, and let's do that, and that's not as expensive. So that's why I say this is a community, district-driven decision. How much do you want to pay for what kind of security?
Boy, if that's the bottom line, we're really asking how much is a life worth, or how much is security for lives, multiple lives, 17 lives 2 weeks ago down there in Parkland.
Look, we've had police, and school resource officers, and run both ways. Police in the schools and school resource officers working for the school board. But we only had them in the high schools and junior highs. We never put them in the elementaries. And I would suggest to you, if you want to prevent this from happening in schools, we need to cover all schools.